पानी की हर बूंद की अपनी कहानी है। किस बादल से बरस, किस पर्वत से निकल, किस नदी से लिपट, किस धरा से टकरा आपके ग्लास तक आई है। आज ये जानना बहुत जरूरी है, जिससे सबके ग्लास में पानी बना रहे। क्या आपके आसपास भी कोई पानी की कहानी है? जुड़िए पानी की कहानी इनिशिएटिव से। panikikahani.org से जुड़ें। जानकारी के लिए संपर्क फॉर्म जरूर भरें। क्या आप जानते हैं आपके नव प्रवर्तक पोर्टल्स भारतीय इंजीनियरिंग द्वारा स्वदेश में ही निर्मित एवं संचालित हैं, यानी वर्डप्रेस इत्यादि जैसे विदेशी फ्रेमवर्क पर किए गए जोड़ तोड़ के काम की तरह। ना तो हमारे पोर्टल्स आपको महंगे पड़ते हैं, ना हमारे सर्वर को हैक करना आसान है। स्वदेशी तकनीक से आप पाएं पूरी तरह से एक्सपर्ट्स द्वारा संचालित मोबाइल रेडी वेबसाइट, यानी कोई झंझट नहीं। सिंपल सालाना प्राइसिंग, यानी जेब पर तो हल्का है ही, कोई सरप्राइज नहीं। और साथ ही पाएं आपके पोर्टल से जुड़े डिजिटल विजिटिंग कार्ड्स, डेली मोटिवेशन, त्योहार बधाई संदेश और भी काफी कुछ। आज ही अपना खुद का मीडिया मजबूत करें। आज ही हमें www.navpravartak.com पर या हमारे नंबर 9650022270 पर मैसेज कर अपना खुद का पोर्टल बुक करें। लोकल के लिए वोकल बने।
We're going to move on now to our final panelists, and I'm pleased very much to welcome Dr. Venkatesh Dutta, who's Associate Professor at Baba Saheb Bimrao Ambedkar University in Lucknow. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chair Jason, and all the panelists. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Let me share my screen. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview on, the recycling opportunities that we have in state of Uttar Pradesh, and what are the bottlenecks, the social, economic, and technical bottlenecks or the barriers that could prevent the rapid diffusion of water recycling prospects. Basically, I work on river systems and river restoration, and during the past couple of years working on different streams and water bodies, I realized that there's a huge challenge to restore these water bodies through appropriate innovation and technology. And there is also a dialogue which is happening at the policy level on to draft the guidelines for wastewater reuse and recycling, because just now we finished drafting water policy for Uttar Pradesh, which is still at the draft stage, and there's a component on wastewater management and reuse policy. So we are also trying to draft a separate policy on wastewater management and reuse. And the state government intends to formulate very strict guidelines, as you have seen in the first presentation, that the National Green Tribunal is also thinking to penalize those who are not meeting the strict regulatory standards. So can I go to the next slide? Yes. So I call the pollution as the biggest market failure, and we have the inefficient market or the economy of water, and there are many reasons. One of the most important reasons that was highlighted in the first presentation is the groundwater overdraft. We have ignored the groundwater economy. The groundwater, the actual contribution of groundwater in our total gross domestic production is highly ignored. We talk about virtual water, we talk about water footprint, but if you discount the externalities, the negative impact that you cause due to overdraft of water, pumping more water that can be actually recharged from the rainfall. We have seen in the district where we are located now, Lucknow, the groundwater is declining by almost 1 meter every year. So if you see the last 2 decades data, the groundwater has dropped by 15 to 20 meters. Aquifers are beginning to compress and collapse, and eventually we are going to get zero. There are already, the 0 days are coming. Second, component is water pricing. We are still locked in the VCS circle. We do not get enough money to run our STP, sewage treatment plant. Forget about operational and maintenance. We don't even recover the recurring capital cost. And the wastewater is still seen as pollution, not as a resource. You know, water is a water. It's a different kind of water. And in water cycle, we want to use the water, reuse it, and return back to the nature in a same pristine state in which we had abstracted in the first place. Next slide. So we talk about supply management, but there is a demand management, and that demand management calls for shifting away from construction of new dams and reservoirs, and that can be achieved through making water recycling, you know, part of your hydrological cycle, part of your supply intervention. And I call it a leaking bucket syndrome, that when your bucket is leaking, you always become a crisis monger. We keep on asking for more water, but there are inherent inefficiencies, there are inherent supply side constraints, and we talk about more supply augmentations. Next slide. So what are the economic and social barriers? And I call it, these barriers have possible solutions. I was very much impressed by the presentation of Balakrishna and Hiralalji, and the common thread in both the presentations is that the solution is inherent, is all local, and we have to dig further, deeper, and convert the barriers into solutions. Making non-potable water useful is the answer. We get water of differentiated quality. There is no uniform quality water, and if you flush the toilet with the same drinking water quality standard, it's a huge loss of national economy. So when you do this reclamation opportunities, when you develop enough capacity, you have to have the institutional arrangements. Like I looked through the model of several countries like the Australia, European Union. They have Water Framework Directive, then OFWAT, Office of Water at UK, and recycling is coming in a very big way, and we have to adopt recycling. The major recycling for restoration, for ecological restoration, even for managed aquifer recharge, but drinking water quality. You have to convert wastewater up to drinking water quality standard, then only you can put into the aquifers. Next. So this is the triangle, the technology and innovation triangle. And if you see the base of the pyramid is technology. Technological maturity. We have to invest enough and come out with innovations, come out with low cost solution where you could convert urban water sewage, urban water, the gray water and the black water into non-potable water, at least of some, non-potable applications like gardening and irrigation and, other non-potable resources. And there is a lot of acceptance. I did a survey while I was doing my work in Delhi, and there is a demand for non-potable water for toilet flushing, for gardening, and even for irrigation, the lawn and the golf course. Even in the construction industry, if you go to NCR, there is a huge demand for non-potable water for constructing your settlements, the housing colonies. Next. So I will not go into detail because time is less and I am the last speaker. So what are the opportunities? We talk about climate change, we talk about resilience, we talk about adaptation. I think water footprint is the biggest intervention, reducing our water footprint, reducing our virtual water. And that could contribute to developing resilience in our system. All the smart cities, they will survive not because of GDP or because of money, but because of ecological endowments, because of green and blue landscape. We have seen this pandemic and we have seen the resilience. It is only due to natural capital that cities would survive in future, and we have to invest on closing this loop of water cycle where wastewater is considered as a resource. And there are many decentralized applications. There are many small scale, simple techniques which Bala was talking about at the household level, at the industry level, and even designing a dual supply system, dual reticulation system where you could use the non-potable water for even toilet flushing is coming in a big way in some of these smart cities. Next. So, so these are some of the non-potable water applications: power plants, industrial applications, irrigation, green belt development. Australia is using all the recycled water for green belt development. Even for ecological restoration, they have biofilters and construction wetlands, and they are also using stormwater reuse for recharging the groundwater. Similarly, we can have recreational lakes, fountains, and decorative ponds, and managed aquifer recharge that is also being talked about to augment the river flows. All the rivers which are perennial rivers are now becoming intermittent in their summer season. So can we augment the river flows during the lean season by treated wastewater? That is also a good option. Next. So I call it the components of water restoration that I designed for my river work. First of all, you have to enhance the water quality, that is clean water. Second, you have to develop the flow regime. There has to be enough water into the river, into the lakes, and also in the groundwater. Next component is, can we go down a little bit? I'm not able to see the slide. Like ecological aesthetics and groundwater recharge, recreation. These are some of the benefits that we can do with the reclaimed water. Cost is very important factor, and the energy cost is where we can intervene with the innovation. We have to develop also some of the techniques, like we have reverse osmosis and ion exchange, but at the bigger level, we have to design system which could take care of the newer emerging contaminants, like smaller plastics, or even drugs. Some of the emerging drugs that is being flushed in our sewage system. So can we design low cost solutions which could take care of the treating the wastewater up to the potable water standards? Next. So these are some of the good references. Australia is, of course, a good example. They have guidelines for water recycling and reuse. And in Uttar Pradesh water policy, I was also a member of the drafting committee of state water policy, and we have included the three components. One is the urban water supply and wastewater treatment in line with the overall framework of Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. Like we have Amrit scheme. So we are talking in terms of the overall framework to be inbuilt into this framework, into this scheme. And decentralized treatment, we are also talking about decentralized treatment at the starting from household level to the block level, and even at the colony level. And the wastewater management and reuse policy should be part of the entire water policy. Similarly, Israel is doing the recycling. Almost 90% of wastewater in Israel is reused, of course, for irrigation. California has a state legislature, and it aims to increase the recycled water by at least 1.5 million acre feet by the end of this year. So similarly, we can have such targets in which could be developed in our master plans. Some of the master plans are also ingraining the area for reclamation, the wastewater reclamation projects, and the construction agencies like CPWD and the public construction department. They are also developing standards for using reclaimed water for their construction industry. Next. So this is my last slide. This is a picture of Assi Nala in Varanasi on the right hand side, and on the left hand side is a small stream in South India. And that is what we want our rivers and our water bodies to be livable, to be full of water quality, to be quality, I mean the which is required for nature, the quality which is pristine, which is sacred, and so that we define the entire water budgeting in the entire hydrological cycle as water which is used, reused, and returned back to the nature in a very pristine state. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Venkatesh. It was very inspiring to see such a progressive view of water resource in policy, all the way from the reuse across communities and industries. These new technologies on detection that can help improve water quality monitoring, and then the great case studies as well that can be implemented here and elsewhere. Thank you so much. We've now come to the end of the speakers and panelists. We're going to take some questions now. Dr. Hiralal unfortunately had to leave, so he welcomes any questions to be sent to Mr. Bharat, and he'll get back to you personally. Maybe Bharat, you can help if you see any questions. I'll start with one here for Dr. Venkatesh. It looks like someone's asking your opinion on the poor. We can have these very robust and progressive policies, whether it's water resource or anything in the watershed management. But how do we address the issues of poor implementation? Perhaps I could throw that to you first, and then perhaps Mr. Gupta would also like to answer that.
Yeah, Jason, I can see there is one question from one of our panel delegate is Mr. Avinash Kumar, who wrote, is there any technique to manage salts in wastewater except MEE? So I think anyone can reply as a panelist.
Great, thanks. We've got two questions now, so we'll let the panelists jump in. Maybe we can start with you, Venkatesh. Yeah, we'll start with Dr. Venkatesh, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Sanjay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was talking about the poor implementation of policies, acts, and laws. We have very well-drafted code of conduct, but when it comes to implementation, we fail miserably. And that is due to, one, we have multiple institutions and there is conflicting role assignment, like there is no one agency who could be held responsible. And there is also technological bottlenecks, like we define well-planned guideline, but we do not do the local capacity building, the local research, whether we have this kind of capacity or not. Like we may have a policy for wastewater recycling and reuse, but when you go to the STP, sewage treatment plant, they do not get 24 hours power supply. So power supply is intermittent. Similarly, the staff, they are not properly trained. Some of the infrastructures, especially in terms of connecting with the secondary, sewage network, that is also poor. And sometimes the stormwater drains are being used to carry the black water and the sewage, which is not required, which is very bad in our planning system. So we have to correct all those. And the first starting point would be to reform the water sector by institutional reform, that is the right kind of institution with right kind of trained manpower, like bureaucrats like Hiralal ji and spirited engineers like Balakrishna. So we have to join these dots together, and with the right kind of capacity building, right kind of communication network, right kind of social capacity building, we can make a dent. We can definitely do positive intervention. And I think time is right, and that's why we are going through this policy revision phase. We are also thinking to design the basin level organizations, at the river basin scale, so that the decisions could be taken at the top down, at the bottom up also, like at the local level, at the grassroots level, at the block level, at the township level, and ultimately the voice of the local people is heard by the bureaucrats.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So this second question is, there any technique to manage salt in wastewater except MEE? There are not many, but whatever the few practice is, one is the solar pond evaporation. But the demerits of evaporation is that whenever the rainy season is there, then there is a likely chances to solar pond got evaporation and the spillover, and there also you will not get proper sunlight to run these solar ponds. Another is the latest one is the MBRE, mechanical recompression. This is the latest version of the ME. So where the same kind of effluent is again with the whatever the heat available for the first run, that again and again reutilized in MBRE, so that the thermal efficiency further got enhanced in this. So these are the two apart from that. Thank you.
you. I see another question here, perhaps for Mr. Gupta as well, related to the water audit, and I'll let you comment first, and if the other panelists want to also answer, that would be great. It is often observed that industries and private companies often do not exclusively disclose their water usage and treatment data in the public domain. So if one has to avail the data, where and which department can one go to for the same?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's true that it's very difficult to collect data from private companies like sugar industry, because I personally had once gone to collect some water samples with my students, and I faced a lot of difficulties because they claimed that they were a zero waste sugar industry, but the locals complained a lot about pollution of nearby farms, and they were releasing some black water from their ETP. So with great difficulty, we went inside their premises and we collected some wastewater for our sampling, and we found that indeed the ETP was not working properly. So I think these companies, they have the annual reports, and they also have their environmental department, and they publish their reports quite regularly. But some of the industries, they do not do it because they do not have properly well maintained ETP. So if you do not get the data, what you can do, you can write to their the chairperson or the managing director, and you can ask them that you want to visit their industry one day, or you can talk to the concerned in charge. And if you do not get the data again, then you can contact the local authorities like district magistrate or the block development officer, that you are not able to get the data of their treatment, because these data should be in the public domain. And even NGT is coming very strongly on reporting of such industries which claim that they are zero waste industry, but actually when you go, you find something different. So this is a very tricky issue. If you go to Kanpur area, some of the industries are so polluting to the local aquifers, the groundwater, that we get chromium and all sorts of heavy metals, even though they say that they are connected to CETP, that is combined effluent treatment plant. So this question is very tricky. I don't know. Sometimes you have to work very hard, like a activist, or write to the newspaper or contact the district magistrate, and so on. Like, it's very difficult to get. I agree that it's very difficult to get data from private industries. I hope I have answered this question.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
can I add
Please.
on? If this time is 1 minute, I will take on this particular question. So these data can we get specifically from 2-3 departments. One is Central Pollution Control Board. Second is, if they are using the bore well, then you can see the Central Groundwater Authority. And the third is, this environment compliance report is publicly available in the public environment forest community website. So environment clearance report will give you the full amount of idea how water consumption is, what kind of treatment units the industry had, and what is the discharge limits, quantity they have to. So this is the one level information can we get from 2-3 departments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that submission. Very helpful. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so I would just like to thank very much the keynote speakers, all the participants, the panelists, the great questions and discussion that we had. I think it was very fruitful, high quality discussion. And I'm also advised that we are over time on the summit as well. So on behalf of CII and all of us and all of the organizers, we'd like to thank all of the participants and speakers and panelists for participating today. It was a very constructive discussion. I think it did well to sort of describe and articulate the main challenges facing UP in India and even somewhat in the world that we're facing with the whole water cycle. But we also saw a lot of solutions and ways forward. And so I think it was a very constructive day. The presentations will be sent out along with recordings of all the sessions. If you have follow-up questions, please send them to Mr. Bharat. So unless any of the organizers have any final thoughts, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for attending today. It was a very productive session. Have a great day. Thank you so much.